Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 23rd season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 247 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Jack Washer, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Encompass Health, a higher level of care. Encompass Healthcare. Ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing and heating and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Freedom RV, Freedom RV Rentals, your best vacation ever. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Jack Washer. I moved to the main panel line. I feel so official right now. We were supposed to have Keith Gooden-Conlon on the show. He was a late game scratch.
He opted out?
Yeah, he opted out, wisely. He didn't want to make the trip from State College. I don't blame him. It's a long drive. It's nighttime. Football's on. So I got the OG Nitwits, Mark Brennan from Fight on State Lions 24/7, and Neil Rudell from the Altoona Mirror. Gentlemen.
He said he would only work with Casey Cantz if we fed him like wings and donuts and everything else.
The budget has been constricted with COVID and everything. So.
He will be back in December, though.
I'm sorry, Keith. So anyways, guys, Penn State, they're still winless. But I think the big, topic of conversation is Sean Clifford benched, Will Levis in, and it seemed to work, and he came very, very close to leading Penn State from 21 points down. Neil, were you surprised when they made the change?
No, not at all. I mean, it was really overdue, and I will be disappointed and surprised if he's not named the starter as early as James Franklin's press conference this Tuesday. I think it had to happen. Sean is a good leader and a good kid, but his play has held the team back this year, and I think Levis really injected a lot of enthusiasm. They were playing harder. I think I was just really impressed with them. That was the only silver lining that came out of the game.
Yeah, the only surprise I had is that they didn't do it sooner. And again, with all due respect to Sean Clifford, who's been nothing but a class act while dealing with us, but to me, after that first interception, that's when you make the move. I mean, that, I think was his 7th turnover of the year, 6 interceptions. And if you follow what happened after that, then he misses a wide open tight end in the end zone. Then he fumbles for a touchdown, and all of a sudden your team is in this gigantic 3-touchdown hole. And I just think he had earned the right to start that game, but I think once he made that mistake, they should have gone to Levis. Obviously, hindsight being 20/20. Neil, I will be surprised if they name Levis the starting quarterback Tuesday. We tape this on Sunday so people know, because I know some people will be listening to the podcast and whatnot. But why would you do it? You could do it internally, but don't give Iowa the lead time to make Iowa prepare for both quarterbacks, right?
I don't know. I can't imagine Iowa's going to prepare for Clifford. Why would you do that? I mean, there's been so many questions about the way the team has been managed on the field this year, and to play that out, I think the team needs firm leadership and direction. and I would just name Levis.
Well,
at this point.
nobody's allowed into practice now. We don't get into practice because of COVID concerns, so they could just as well do that within the team. I mean, they kept Journey Brown's situation quiet for how many weeks? I'm sure they could keep a lid on that. But absolutely, I mean, I think we're both getting to the same point. Really, it seems like this is the way that they have to go to Will Levis. You know, in fairness to him, in fairness to the team, because at some point there has to be a level of accountability for every single person on that team. And again, Sean Clifford, class act, worked really hard, but he was not getting it done.
You know, one thing that kind of shocked me, you know, when Levis has played in the past, it was always to come in, power run, you know, hand the ball off and whatnot, even when he started last year against Rutgers. When that ball comes out of his hand, it's like, it's popping. It's like a reliever throwing 99. That ball pops in the mitt or in the receiver's hands. And I was very surprised by that. He had one where he rolled out to the right, he fired it on a 4th down. I'm like, wow, Clifford can't make that throw, or he can't make it with that velocity, that, you know, intensity. And I was very shocked to see how much, I guess, Levis has progressed from last year, where it felt like all he did was run.
It surprised me when Levis said after the game that he had not taken very many reps with the first team, even this week. I mean, you knew it was a question of whether, James said he may need him. They were trying to prepare to get him ready, but he really didn't practice that well. That's why I'm anxious to see what he'll be able to do now that you kind of know, whether they announce it publicly or not, that he's going to be the guy going forward. It may help him. You know, he wasn't as accurate in the red zone with some of those low percentage calls that they made. I want to see what he can do when they fully prepare, because look at how he's injected them on the road here at Ohio State last year. I think this kid has an upside.
Well, didn't you guys both get the sense when Franklin was talking about it last week that he was more talking about Levis bringing him in certain packages, not necessarily as the quarterback, almost, you know, in a Tommy Stevens type of mode. And I was surprised too, though, that, you know, obviously he wasn't able to build any of that chemistry on those red zone plays with some of the receivers. And Will Levis told us that after the game, that he didn't get a lot of first team reps. It was almost all second team reps. But that's where, Neil, to your point, if they are making this move, you have to do it early so he gets the first team reps all week, so he has that chemistry when you get down into the red zone or wherever.
Well, I really liked that one play he had. It gave me like a Russell Wilson vibe, where I think it was the start of the 4th quarter. He spins out of a would-be sack, and then Freiermuth, for some reason, Nebraska forgot to cover the biggest guy on the field and hits him for 74 yards and whatnot. But I'm like, that is a play where a guy's coming from the blind side. You can somehow sense the pressure, escape out of it, and then it almost essentially, you know, got Penn State right back in the game. And, you know, again, they almost pulled on the end. Well, it did,
and it's hard for a right-hand quarterback rolling left to make that throw. Freiermuth, you know, there's some of these kids have been banged up, and I think he's one of them. He's not going to want to put that play on tape for the NFL because he's faster than that. I was surprised he got caught. I think he's somewhat injured.
No, I mean, I think you could see how much Brenton Strange was playing in that game, the backup tight end. I mean, Freiermuth, clearly something. He went down on one play where he was kind of slow getting up. But to his credit, and listen, I say to the credit of a lot of these guys, I mean, this team is not playing well whatsoever, but I do think you're seeing from a lot of the players, you're seeing effort. Not from all of them. I think everybody could watch the game and see some effort, some players where maybe the effort isn't there, but a lot of the key guys, the effort is there.
All right,
especially this week, I think that proved that.
Yeah.
Last week, maybe not so much.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely there was a lot of fight at the end of the game. All right, still ahead on Nittany Nation Overtime. Does Penn State know when kickoff time is each week? Because through 4 weeks, you can make the argument that they don't. We'll talk about that next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Encompass Health, a higher level of care. Encompass Healthcare. Ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. Here with the NitWits. Mark, through 4 games, there's been one constant theme. Penn State, for some reason, loves to get down to multiple scores, double digits, whatever you want to call it, and has to claw its way back. In 2 out of the 4 games, they've almost done it. 2 out of the 4 games, it just, wasn't enough. Why is that continuing to happen?
I have the solution. We learned that next week's game is at 3:30, 3:30 kick, and I'm advising the defense to show up at the stadium before 4:15. In this way, maybe you won't give up. No, listen.
The bus driver.
Yeah,
getting lost.
Yeah, it's the bus driver. He's getting lost on the way to the stadium. No, in all seriousness, I do think this speaks to preparedness, and I think that speaks to coaching. I love Brent Pry. I think James Franklin's a very good coach. But for some reason, this team is not coming out and playing well early. It's amazing to see how this defense plays early in a game compared to how it's playing later in a game. It's just these teams, every team now has marched straight down the field and scored against them, and you just can't do that because we talk about complementary football all the time. Well, sometimes it happens in reverse. You give up that early score, now the offense all of a sudden is pressing. And then that leads to mistakes and puts the defense in a bad spot. So it's all kind of rolling up on itself.
I agree with that. I've been saying about their defensive ends don't set the edge. But my question would be, who's the leader? Who's the leader on the defensive side of the ball that has been there and people will listen to and look up to?
Well, you know what we've heard a lot about, and I actually wrote this. We've heard a lot about vocal leaders on the defense. They don't need vocal leaders now. They need guys who are going to go out there on the field and get it done. And I would also speak to your point, Neil, about the pass rush and the DN setting the edge. Jason Owe, to me, is playing really well. The rest of their DNs have to really step it up at this point. You look at that game, they had 1 sack and 1 quarterback hurry in a game, and it was very similar to what happened against Maryland. That is not going to cut it. And the issue is these are 2 young quarterbacks the last 2 weeks that you could not get to. They have to get to the quarterback somehow.
I thought Brooks has played pretty well lately. What was the deal with Castro Fields? Do you know?
I don't know. We weren't able to ask James Franklin. There were so many other questions. But I will say this much. This was a guy who was hoping to play well enough to be Penn State's first defensive back ever to go in the first round of the NFL draft. He didn't play, and nobody even asked a question about him. So, I mean, I think it speaks to the fact that that secondary hasn't exactly been lighting it up.
Though, for as disappointing as the defensive starts have been, to me, they really allowed 20 points. Yeah. They got a 55-yard interception return right out of the chute. They held that to a field goal, and then your quarterback gets eaten for a touchdown. So really, it's really 20 points, which should be enough to win.
But it's when they're doing it, Neil, and when it's setting that tone. I agree.
They gave the offense 2 shots in the last 10 minutes.
Right. I forget what all of our predictions were. I don't even know who Nitwit of the Week is this week.
Yeah,
but I think didn't all of us pick Penn State to score more than 20 points? In which case they would have won. But I think it's huge when they're giving up because you're setting a tone in the game, and now all of a sudden there's 0 margin for error.
And when the defense does step up, twice Penn State gets into the red zone late, and actually throughout the game, and they had to settle for field goals, but when you get to the end of the game, you got to get touchdowns, and they come up short twice. I mean, the play calling, we complained with Ricky Ronnie last year, or at least fans did, that it wasn't creative enough, and it feels like we're right back to the same way. And we brought in this guy, Kirk Shiraka, and all of a sudden...
Yeah, Ronnie and Moorhead were tweeting yesterday they were disappointed in this play call.
Did any of them want a fullback?
I don't know what happened there. I mean, they moved the ball up and down the field 500 yards, and yet they get down to the 10-yard line. They settle for 3 field goals. The last 2, they can't get it in. They had plenty of time, 3 timeouts. They managed the game decently until it came to the clutch. They don't seem to have the kind of creativity and plays that we thought Kirk Shiraka would bring.
Well, I think they went away from the run when they got closer to the end zone on those last 2 drives, and James Franklin talked about that. You really have to be able to keep your opponent honest, and when you're dealing with a new quarterback who didn't get a lot of first-team reps in practice last week, maybe you rely on that run a little bit more just to keep the defense honest, and I don't think that they did that.
Now, one thing, this is like a very small thing, but it bothers me because it's not just Franklin who does this, but it's multiple coaches who do this. They're down 3 scores in the 3rd quarter, and he lines up to kick, I believe it was like a 56-yard field goal. And if Jordan Stout made the field goal, they still would have been down by 3 scores. Why do coaches do that? Like, it infuriates me that coaches, for some reason, think that is a good idea. Do you guys have any explanation, or do you scratch your head like I do, or throw something at the TV?
I could only imagine it's analytics, that they look at things a certain way. And as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, everybody else out there could know what I'm dealing with these analytics and these coaches being beholden to analytics. I think sometimes you have to go with a gut feeling. And at that point, from what we understand, it was a bit of a breezy day. We know Stout can do that, but is that more than maybe a 50-50 proposition? Didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it was desperation.
Yeah.
But James can't win on the field goals. Last week when he should have taken one early, he didn't. Against Ohio State, maybe you can understand when they went for it. So they're still trying to figure that part out.
All right, still ahead on Nittany Nation Game Day. We're going to get to some positivity here. How about the running back room? Despite losing their top 2 starters, they look like they haven't lost a beat. We'll talk about that next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing and heating and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Freedom RV Rentals, your best vacation ever. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome back to the show. So they lose Journey Brown. They lose Noah Cain on the first series of the first game of the year. And yet, the running backs seem to be like the bright spot of this team. I mean, does that go to Jaywan Sider? Does that go to Franklin on recruiting? Why has that position, no matter who is, next to Clifford or Levis, they seem to get the job done?
Well, I think it goes to recruiting, because obviously they've recruited extremely well at that position. But also, I think you have to give a shout out for the most part in this game to the offensive line. That's the best that group played. I think the move they made to start with Caden Wallace at tackle and sliding Will Fries inside helped. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but they were able to dominate a little bit and get that running game going. So when you have these young, talented backs, all they need is a little bit of space, and we saw that. Now let's see how these backs are able to do in pass protection, and let's see if they could get them involved a little bit in the passing game as well, because that's one area where you're really missing Journey Brown.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to say about the running backs until this past game. I thought this game was really a kind of a breakout. All of them looked good. Lee, Keziah looked good. And Ford, these guys all averaged over 5 yards a crack. The Lee push on 3rd and 4 to get him down to the 11. Well, there wasn't a big hole there. I mean, and I think that was one of the real unfortunate things about this game is you wasted a real good performance by the running backs and an encouraging performance by the offensive line. So we'll see if they can build on it this week. I was usually pretty stout.
Yeah, I think youth being served, whether it's on the offensive line or at running back, you're seeing some of these areas. Now, I get Caden Wallace coming in as only one guy on the offensive line, but I think the chemistry there just seemed to be a little bit better.
Now, since the last time we taped, Journey Brown, it was announced that he has to medically retire from football. Very sad news, because he's just such a great kid. And the last half of last year, I mean, he was as good a running back as anybody in the country. But I thought what was cool during the game was each time a running back scored, and I believe they had 2 rushing touchdowns, they held up the 4 sign. And I believe some defensive players were doing that too. And it just shows how much this team still cares about him. I believe they they had a jersey up of him, his jersey hanging in the doorway right before they went out. So I thought that was kind of a cool gesture by not only the team, but also the entire program in general.
Yeah, and I think it's also maybe an indication that they haven't completely lost this team. I think to Neil's point earlier, the team fought back in the second half, and listen, there seems like they're trying to rally around Journey the best they can. So maybe those are a couple of positives.
Really unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had a couple high-profile athletes die of that particular heart disease. I'm sure that he got a bunch of multiple opinions before they had to make this decision. Real sad for Journey Brown. We wish him the best.
Now we already kind of touched on the defense in the second half for kind of really playing well, but I don't know if you guys saw the thing on the Big Ten Network. I'm going to butcher his last name. Adam, can someone help me out? He was here.
Talafaro.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was. I mean, for someone who was not here when that happened.
What were you, 2 years old when it happened?
I was eight. Come on now. But to watch that whole journey of what he went through, I mean, did that take you guys back a little bit? And what do you remember specifically just about that time and just seeing what the team and what he went through?
Well, I think it was really one of the most emotional moments of Beaver Stadium history. And even watching that 20 years later. And one thing I really enjoyed was the Shamar Finneys and Anthony Adams and the guys that they, got to speak about their former teammate. That was so well done by the Big Ten Network, and just such an inspirational story to see who Adam Talaferro and his family said about what he has been through. He's probably made more of an impact on, from being injured and the way he handled that than had he even gone on and played.
Yeah, I'll always remember Joe Sarah, the former Penn State assistant coach, who was like an administrator at that time. And when Adam Talaferro was hurt at Ohio State, the team had to come back, and Adam stayed out there. And Joe Sarah, who was this crusty, you would have thought he was the meanest person in the world, showed this gigantic heart of gold and stayed out there with Adam until he was able to come back. That was just, when you talk about good people doing good things, Adam Talaferro, obviously the inspirational story, but the late, great Joe Sarah, he was there, Wayne Sebastianelli, all these people did such a, Penn State really represented there, and Adam, it's so cool to see what he's become.
Yeah.
And he probably has trouble pronouncing your last name.
Probably, so we'll call it even. All right, coming up next, a red-hot Iowa team coming to Happy Valley, but Penn State's actually had their number the last few times they played. Prediction time, that's next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Dorman's Jewelry. The answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage. No matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back. Wrapping things up. Let's look at our updated Nitwit of the Year standings. Mr. Mark Brennan, finally
Didn't realize.
in the win column. Neil and I we're slow playing. We're like Penn State's defense. We show up in the second half of the year and whatnot. So, Mr. Brennan, they take on Iowa. Iowa is a 2-point favorite. At least that's the last time I checked, and that will probably change by the time they get to Saturday. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a really tough one because I had said that I don't know that I could take Penn State until they actually show me something. And you know what? I'm going to go on the assumption that they're going to start Levis. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We're taping this on Sunday. I think he's going to infuse a little bit of energy into this program. I think they're going to kind of feed off of each other. Franklin has had Kirk Ferentz's number a little bit, so I'm going to maybe regret this, but I'm going to go Penn State 24, Iowa 21.
All right.
How about you? Let me bet last.
All right. I'm thinking Penn State is going to win as well. I think Levis just brings something different in with that new ability to throw the ball and whatnot. I'm going Penn State 30, Iowa 17.
Wow.
Oh my. Yeah. Well, I was going
Deflated
to
ball,
last
you
'cause,
can't.
hey, they're 0-4. You took the bullet last week. They got to prove it to me. This is Ferentz. You're staring down the barrel now at 0-5, the worst start in your history, and you got to look over there at the guy who was supposedly going to succeed Joe about 27 years ago, and is very comfortable winning 6-4 if that's what it takes. So I'm going to say Iowa 21, Penn State 20.
All right, so we got 24-21 Penn State, 30-17 Penn State, and sorry,
21-20.
I have very bad
You're
short-term
from the
memory.
Midwest.
I know. It is what it is. All right, we'll hopefully see you back here next week, and hopefully, hey, Penn State might have a win next week, but that's why they play the game. For Mark, Neil, I'm Jack. We'll see you back here next week, hopefully with a guest. Maybe not Goon, but we'll see him in about a month and whatnot. So, again, see you next week, same time. Be 11:30, could be midnight. Who knows? We'll see you.
The NitWits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Encompass Health, a higher level of care. Encompass Healthcare. Ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing and heating and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Freedom RV, Freedom RV Rentals, your best vacation ever. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.